All right, well. Now we'd like to open for discussions with the audience, and people disagree. You guys can just form a line right in the middle. She's going to be first, because I promised her that. A line over there, I'm sorry. I guess switch the camera.
If you disagree, you get to the front, and this will be first. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, okay. Maybe before was a bit of a spontaneous outburst and maybe not the best way to address my objections to what you were saying, I'll admit. But I just so deeply object to a lot of what you're saying, but at the root I feel like there's a clear misunderstanding about the core values of feminism. You're saying that it's bitter women, or that it's not allowing men to be men anymore, or demonizing masculinity. I really don't agree with. I don't think there's any value in kind of glorifying toxic masculinity that we have now, with making it seem as though being a violent man or anything like that is appropriate. I think it's really damaging.
Would you be able to phrase it as a question? Sorry for the panel.
Oh, okay.
I can say a couple of things back, and we can have a discussion about this. So first and foremost, you started by saying, I feel like. It's really important that we know what you think like, because a big problem is that people are thinking, are feeling, and they're not really thinking anymore. Secondly, you brought up toxic masculinity. I believe toxic masculinity exists, but it exists inside of radicalized feminists, right? Where they're thinking that they should be able to own and control society because they're marching in the street with pussy hats and saying that they demand justice for a free and fair election, like they did with Donald J. Trump. I don't like this trend where we're trying to turn men, and you call it this. Masculinity is masculinity. I like masculinity. Masculinity is actually the one thing that saved me in life. I was grateful to have my grandfather, who was the strongest example of what it means to be a man, right? And because of that, having that structure, it actually saved me, because he taught me personal responsibility. He taught me to have a relationship with God, right? And yes, he's a man's man. He did everything with his hands. He worked on the sharecropping farm from the time he was 5 years old. Today, that archetype of what a man is being taught that there's something wrong with it, that there's something that's implicitly violent about being a man, and that's wrong. And I think the people that are harmed the most by it, by the way, are women. Women are harmed the most. When you break down men and strong fathers, we are the ones that suffer the most.
And also, can I just say that, men commit suicide at faster rates than women. Women actually live longer than men. Most men are actually in prison, and most men, more than women, are homeless. So
women graduate more from college. In what way are we suffering? What statistic do you feel that women are suffering and men aren't? Because there might be a meninist. There might need to be a meninism movement.
You have a female prime minister.
I would just say, there's a lot of things to address there, but to begin with, what you say about having a strong grandfather, a male figure, if you're saying that you've internalized these things, these messages that he taught you, then surely there's nothing inherently masculine about those qualities. I don't understand how you're defining masculinity.
I don't understand how you're defining it.
Yeah, why
don't you define it?
Why don't you define it?
Because you're the one that so you should define what masculinity means to you.
Well, it depends. I would say masculinity now, obviously just being a social construct, literally nothing more than a set of expectations that are placed on someone.
So then how can you call it, if it's a social construct, how can you call it toxic?
Because social constructs can be toxic. If you have a patriarchal society that is sending a message that men need to be dominant, or they need to be, I know you don't like the word violent, but I think there's something violent about it.
About masculinity?
No, about the sort of masculinity that we have now, this toxic.
What makes that a construct, though? In order for something to be a construct, it has to begin as a norm, which a majority amount of people follow.
It doesn't. If you have a patriarchal society that is sending messages that men need to possess certain qualities, and I believe the qualities that they're suggesting should be adopted are bad.
Which quality? I just need to know what exactly you've seen when you've said that is an example of toxic masculinity.
I think men feeling that they need to dominate spaces physically and speaking over women, interrupting women, belittling them.
Yeah.
Do you see how good I'm being?
I mean, you can...
So, just a question. So, you just said when men interrupt and dominate spaces. Were you a toxic feminist when you interrupted me when I was on stage?
No, I was interrupting something
I'm just asking.
that I fundamentally don't believe in.
I'm just asking because you're saying that somebody interrupting someone is now a symbol of toxic masculinity. You just interrupted me on stage, so are you a toxic feminist?
I wasn't interrupting you because I didn't...
You went bullshit.
Yeah, because you were talking
bullshit.
Because you were talking bullshit. I didn't interrupt you because you're a woman. I interrupted you because I didn't
Maybe-
believe what you were saying. It's not that I didn't believe
But
what you were
maybe
saying
that's what
because
men
of
do
your
sometimes?
femininity.
Is it
I
possible
was
that men
disagreeing with
sometimes
with
interrupt because they disagree with what women are saying and not because they're toxic masculinity in the air? Like, do you get what I'm saying? Is that you're coming up with terms and sometimes people just interrupt. I'm fine with the fact that you interrupted me. It happens all the time and I'm not holding that against you. I'm just using it to prove a point that you've created an entire concept around when men interrupt women, but you literally just interrupted me and you don't identify as yourself as a toxic feminist.
No, because I interrupted you on the basis that I didn't agree with the politics you're espousing, both of you.
Well, maybe men
Not
are
because
just
I don't
disagree
believe
with
in
what
what
you're
you're saying
saying.
because you're a woman. The fact that you're a woman is completely irrelevant to me.
But maybe
what
it's
you're
irrelevant
both
to men as well when they interrupt people.
That's
Men
not the
interrupt
case.
other men. Men interrupt
That's
women.
not the case.
We're
There is
society.
a culture of men's voices being valued more than women's. And
What
so-
is your metric for
Give
this?
us one piece of data.
Yeah,
One.
like a data.
Any piece
You can't
of data.
just say there's a culture of men interrupting women. What's your data point for
Any
this?
kind of interpretivist data where you're looking at interactions, at dynamics, you can see. I mean, what do you want me to say? Like a
Like a
statistic?
fact?
Yeah.
Any fact.
Any kind of
How
any
about the
kind
stuff
of
Dominique
analysis
A
or
recent huge
observation of
cultural example,
interaction.
maybe?
So can I ask a question? Do you think we live in a patriarchy?
Yes.
Why do women live longer than men? Why are men more likely to commit suicide? Why do women
I'll tell
compose
you-
50+% of
I'll
college
Why do we
graduates?
control 89% of the spending power within households if men are the ones that are going out and making all of the money,
Because
as we like to
women
say?
have the sole responsibility of caring for the house and the children.
So it's a
they're not
patriarchy that
working.
allows women a lot of responsibility.
Within a household, within a certain sphere, not a powerful one. The household is not
Then
a
why are
powerful
majority of
sphere.
business startups women, majority of master's degrees, and majority of
And
doctorate
also,
degrees
can
in
I
the
say,
States?
the thing about women living longer, married women live the least long. Unmarried women live longest because they do not have the responsibilities, the emotional labor of being
Marriage
with a
is
man.
emotional labor.
Pardon?
Marriage is emotional labor for women, and that's
That's a great point.
What? No, because the way that women support men, like, it's a huge
thought
burden.
we live in a
They support
patriarchy.
each
I'm
other.
not saying no, they don't. No, they don't. I'm talking
But so
about.
this is sort of, I appreciate the discussion we're having. You're such a perfect reason for
Because
why I
you're
just
all
I could never be a
emotion.
feminist
No
because
facts.
everything that I just couldn't. It's like you don't really know why you're calling it toxic. You did the
No,
exact
I
same
do.
thing,
I
but
know
you decided that
exactly
when
why I'm
men
calling it
interrupt, it's
toxic.
because you're a woman. But you decided that when
it's
you
not.
interrupt, it's just because you had a differing
You asked me
opinion.
for one example
I know,
of
I know,
toxic
I know. And then
masculinity,
you
and
say
I
stuff
told you
about the
people
marriage and
interrupt.
breakdown as an emotional labor. There are women, just so you know, that aspire to get married and have children and stay at home and raise
that's
good
okay.
children. And
I
that's
agree.
okay.
It's completely
So, but why are you now making it seem like that puts us in a position that's less than man? Want to create a society? Be the person that raises every individual that's in society. Feminism has made it seem like there's something wrong with being a mother, that there's something wrong with being a wife. And everything that you just said is that. You have. It's not emotional labor. I want to have children. I want to raise my children. I don't want to be the CEO of a company and not have a husband. And that's not what I aspire to. And that's why feminism is having a hard time with a lot of women who are realizing that when they give up everything that they naturally want in life to be a feminist, they end up miserable and alone.
No, I'm not.
No, I'm not. Please don't tell me that I'm sitting here because
I can't
I'm
wait to
standing.
talk to you.
I'm sitting here because I worked
You'll-
hard.
you'll be
I was
next.
personally responsible. I'm not sitting here because of feminism. No, I am not sitting here because of any feminist.
Well,
trust me.
So can I ask? Can a man
Yeah, but
ask a question?
feminism is supposed to be about choice, and what radical feminism is actually doing is taking away that choice and making women feel
not.
bad
It's-
about wanting to maybe be the traditional view of what a woman is. There's nothing wrong with having a choice to do both. I don't really understand your point.
No, I agree. Feminism isn't trying to destroy the family. Women can happily be mothers, and they can.
You just said it's
be
emotional
wives.
labor to be married.
It is in some way. There is an imbalance where men.
It's
are going,
not. I don't feel that way. So does that make which one of us is less of a woman? We have different opinions.
What do you mean, which of us is less remorseful?
You're saying that it is, and I'm saying that it's not. We have a differing opinion, and the reason why I don't like feminism is because it basically tells us that we have to feel this way,
No,
that we
it
have to
doesn't.
feel
No, it
bitter
doesn't.
towards
It's
men,
just
towards
trying to
husbands,
make
towards
you
marriage,
aware of
towards
your
children, and
choices.
that's why I'm trying to let you know the feminist movement is considered very radicalized because there are many women, especially conservative women, who just don't feel that way. We don't feel burdened by children and marriage.
Can I give you some facts, though, to support this? No? You don't want to hear from a man? Okay. Wait, you see how things get really dangerous and you start to generalize men and women all of a sudden, like you did?
I just wanted to continue the conversation
ahead.
that I was
Okay,
having
you can
with
talk to
Candace. Without you
We'll
jumping
talk
in
about
with your
facts later. Sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
I understand that some women want a family and they want to be mothers. I completely respect that. All feminism is doing is telling you that you do have a choice. And I don't believe radical feminism is pushing women into hating the family. It's just suggesting that maybe this doesn't have to be your lot. And some women have internalized values that make them think that this is what they want when really they might not.
So you can
I
read them
really
right.
do want a
Appreciate-
husband and children one day.
Okay,
So,
that's fine,
but
and
what
I
I'm saying to you is the
respect
reason
that.
why I don't like feminism is because feminists think feminism is mandatory. The second you find out that a girl doesn't identify as a feminist, you're up here and you're asking a bunch of questions. I don't like the feminist movement. I think it's become very toxic and very hostile towards men. If you believed in the equality that men and that women should be able to think whatever we wanted, you wouldn't be debating me right now. You'd say, well, more power to you because you'd be a true feminist. But you're not. You're trying to.
I think that you're belittling other women.
I'm
by
not belittling them.
by not
You're allowed to be a
engaging in
feminist. I'm not
feminism.
telling you can be a feminist. You could buy a pussy hat if you left today, and I wouldn't mind. I've never had an issue with people that are feminists. I have an issue when people tell me that I now have to be a feminist or that it's complete bullshit when I say that I think it's harmful to keep telling men that masculinity is wrong. Masculinity is a component of being a man. I think a society needs and thrives on strong men. There's never been a society without strong men. There's never been a society without strong men. And because I support that, you're upset and you're calling bullshit. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with strong men? Why does that make you upset?
I just think that the values, you referenced the Gillette advert, all it was saying was, the message was fundamentally just stop being violent, just...
No, it
No, it wasn't.
No,
In your view.
Little toddlers.
There were parts
Boys
of it-
will be boys. Boys tend to be reckless. They tend to punch each other and wrestle each other. That's a healthy, necessary part of the child development process. Trying to demonize that in the parental guidelines that Gillette was trying to have in a 30-second to a minute ad is toxic feminism,
That is toxic
attacking
feminism.
toxic masculinity. So let me give you some examples super quick. So you say, that's not what feminism wants. The predominant viewpoint in the university now in the States and the UK is an anti-male posture, whether it be papers that literally say abolish men, whether it be books that say the problem with men. You're looking at me funny. The Huffington Post publishes at least a weekly piece that says that men should have a less powerful role in
Cancel
society.
white men.
Cancel white men is a common theme. The Me Too movement. Oh, so you agree with it? Okay.
The men have done
Wait,
a
can you
lot
repeat what you
historically.
just said?
They've won every single war, every freedom that we have in
Can you repeat
society
what
is
you
because
just
of
said?
men.
I said it's because white men have historically done so much shit, they're just
So
asking
you
you to
do
stop
agree
for
with the
once.
anti-male posture. So your
No,
true
I
radical
don't.
feminism
I don't
comes
agree
out
with it.
after 10 minutes of cross-examination. Before you said, I have no problem with men. Now you
Now
said
you're
it's
saying
because
you
white
do.
men have done a lot of shit.
Yeah, but-
Now we get to revealing who you really are,
But
which
that
is
is
a
what
hateful,
feminism is.
angry person.
They just hate men. There is no other
No,
platform.
They don't hate men. They're just,
You just
there's
said-
no problem. There is no problem with analysing the actions of men in history and condemning them.
You mean like
What
winning
about all the
World
good
War II?
ones?
You know the ones
What
who
about all
died
the good
for our
ones?
freedom. So that's wrong. We can't do that.
Like defeating the
Or,
Nazis?
or people, men who had inventions, anything that men have invented, we can't use anymore.
Slavery
So there-
wasn't
there's-
ended in America because
no, there's
women were
positives and
fighting.
negatives.
It's complete hyperbole.
What about all of the good? What about all the good things? Everything that we have in society, every war that was fought and won was because of men. Do you ever think
Half
about
the
that?
wars were unnecessary anyway. I mean, wars
they
that we
happen,
fought
though.
and
Now
Now
we're
won.
spiraling. Now
Yeah,
we're
and
spiraling.
But they happen
by
and then
men.
fought in them.
So what they won was that they started unnecessarily.
Yeah, women have
They
never
took the
started
contr-
wars, but wars have never been fought over women in this country. That never happened, Henry VIII. Right? What's the point?
Because he was an adulterer. I mean, that's a terrible example.
Do you
What,
think
just wanted
that
to
that
shag
women? Let me
around
ask you a
and have a
question.
male
Do you
heir.
think
That's an
women can
awful
have done
example.
anything wrong, or that women can do anything wrong? Like, would you have been okay if there was like a strict razor commercial like about toxic femininity? Would that have been okay with you?
Can you tell me what you think toxic femininity
Accusing
is?
men of things that never happen and
Yeah.
calling it sexual
Like
assault?
what?
Like Brett Kavanaugh?
He is an awful man and a rapist.
Wait, he's a what? He's an honorable
awful man. An
Hon-
awful man.
Honorable?
I said awful.
Prove it.
What?
We have facts. Name one fact of anything awful he's ever done.
He raped someone.
because she said so.
Yeah, show me
wait,
some
hold on.
evidence.
Because she said so.
That wasn't even a trial in a court. It was in front of a.
So why isn't there a trial in the court? Why didn't she go file it?
Why didn't she file a police report?
Because
She
there
can't
was no
remember the
evidence.
date, time, place, no witnesses.
We have this culture, this toxic culture where women aren't.
The same
believed.
culture leads to
Okay.
people like Jussie Smollett then faking a hoax because, you know, you have to be a
Bingo.
victim.
Or-
No, you can't then sit here and say that without facts that you can say he's a rapist, but then Jussie Smollett can get away with saying there was people shouting, this is Trump country, we're going to beat you up without facts. You either have facts for both, or you can't just leave them.
Why did he feel necessary to do that?
Okay,
Because
can
he
I
wants to
ask
start a
you-
race war.
Evident that
Can I
Because he
just? I
wants
want to
put
ask you a
people
last
against
question.
each other.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think? So now we're getting. Because now this is why I don't support feminism, by the way. Because do you believe in the concept that women should just be believed absent facts? Because that was the Christine Blasey Ford thing. There was not a single fact. Do you think that women should be believed absent facts if they say that they were raped and assaulted?
Not without fact, but I think there should be a culture of belief. If someone comes forward and says, a man or a woman comes forward and says something has happened to them, that they should be given the time to be heard and to
was
speak
heard.
of their experience.
Okay, but I just
not
hold
by
on.
a court, not by a
Rule of
judge,
law.
not by legal professionals.
Why didn't she submit a police report?
At the time,
She
She
never
still
did.
hasn't.
because there is a culture of disbelief, because she was in an
But she had no
important
evidence.
position.
There's no statute of limitations for rape in Maryland. She could file a police report today. It's because she made up the entire thing.
No, she didn't.
So why doesn't she know the time, the place, no corroborating witnesses? Her story changed 8 times. None of her friends said it ever happened or she ever talked about it once before. Everything about her life story changed at least 6 times. And 2 of the women that came forward and said that something happened are actually under criminal conviction for making up the entire thing. They never met her once before. This was a con job to try to displace United States Supreme Court
It was a political
justice.
hit job. It really was. But I do want to say this to you, and something for you to just consider, because I think we should wrap this up, because I don't think you're ever going to not be a feminist, and I'm never going to be one, right? But it's really important when you start getting into that slippery slope of believe women, and I talk about this particularly to Minority America, because we've learned our lesson the hardest with this, and I think radicalized feminism, when I did an interview, I said it was the closest thing to white supremacy I've ever seen is radicalized feminism. The concept of just believing a woman because she said something is the direct thing that led to all of our ancestors getting lynched in America. When white women would just say that something happened, okay, and we were supposed to magically believe it. Our ancestors were then chased after, put into cars, Emmett Till, everything that happened in America happened because white women should just be believed. So you will never, ever, ever hear me stand behind a radicalized concept like just believe women because they're crying. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today.
Thank you.
Would you like to say something? You wanted to say something? We have a disagreement
If you
precedent here,
guys
and
disagree,
then you
can
want to
just
say
queue
something.
over on
right?
that side and then do
Yeah, if you guys want to file in line, the disagreements get precedent
over
here.
on that side.
So everyone.
It's terrible.
All right, everyone, thank you for being here.
I'm a little bit concerned that you're mischaracterizing left and also feminism and so on. I think you're talking about certain factions within these movements. You know, I think it's obviously the case that feminism has brought, you know, over the last 100 years in this country has done tremendous things for women. I find it a little bit frightening that you're mischaracterizing a faction within the feminist movement in the way you are, and sort of conveniently forgetting the wonderful things that have been done to advance the rights of women in the last 100 years. But anyway, that's to one side. I'd say a similar thing about the way you're characterizing the left. I mean,
Question?
Yeah, all right. The question is this. I mean, do you think the is the NHS a good thing?
Yes,
Yeah.
but it could be run a lot better.
Okay.
It could be way more efficient, but it could run better. No one's arguing. We had this. I'm just going to argue. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we had the same question there. We were told that all of you right-wingers, you want to get rid of NHS. No, I mean, America has a different system, but there are more than 2 countries in the world. There's France, there's other countries that run the health system differently. But if we get caught up as a country just talking about the NHS as kind of some religion and never talk about its failures and how we can improve it, we're never going to have the health service that the huge amounts of money we put in every year towards it from taxes can deliver. Okay?
I agree. Well, all right. If I could put them all together, like if you think about, I think it's a good thing that every child in this country, is assured of education. You know,
It was
I think
a Conservative Prime
okay.
Minister that did that.
Is that right? Who was that?
Benjamin Disraeli,
Okay.
universal education. That was Conservative.
Okay, look, terrific. Perhaps I could just put it like this. I'm a little bit, I'm a bit, if I may, I think that you're pinging from one extreme to the other. I'm aware, I think there are excesses on both sides of politics. But if I could, okay, I suppose what I'm saying is it breaks my heart, frankly, as somebody who is, I'm non-partisan actually, but I do lean to the left. It's so obvious that the left and the Labour movement has done so much for this country in so many ways. It's just a fact. I'm sorry, it's a fact. And you've sort of forgotten all of that. You know, if I may, I'll just say this, I'm rather uncomfortable about the way that you're mischaracterising the wonderful, wonderful things that the left and feminists have done in this country, especially over the last 100 years, and you're focusing in
like making
on,
Jewish people feel they have to be scared to go back in society. That's something that they've done recently.
You're focusing on a small group of nutters to advance your own political ends, and I find it quite disturbing. And
Thank you so much for your feelings
We appreciate
today.
that. Let's get a disagreement here. Let's go.
Could we also think about how to phrase things?
Who's up? Someone who disagrees? You disagree with the Romney Ryan shirt? Cool.
No, I like it. It's ironic. I think it's pretty funny. But so you're very against kind of. You're very you're not a huge fan of socialism. I'm kind of getting that vibe. So what is? I've got two questions. What is in America what is your vision? What is your perfect idea of healthcare? Because in the UK we very much like our socialized healthcare. Even you guys want to keep it. So what is your vision for perfect healthcare in your Mad Max kind of small government world?
Mad Max. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. Kind of like a wasteland. No government. I know it's not like that at all.
You
know.
ever heard of LASIK eye surgery before? So how's LASIK eye surgery regulated in the States?
I'm not sure. How is it?
In the Mad Max world.
Tell me.
Well, in the Mad Max world that you're trying to fearmonger,
yeah.
it's not covered by
I
insurance.
know it's not true, but it's just
So it's in the private market. So I'd like the U.S. healthcare system to work how the LASIK eye surgery industry has worked over the last 10 years, where it's a vital organ, not covered by insurance, not covered by government hospitals, not covered by Medicaid, and not covered by Medicare, where it's a cash-only transaction. So over the last 10 years, the most amazing medical advancements around LASIK eye technology have stemmed from America, and the price has gone down dramatically. So it used to be $20,000 per eye, now you can get it $750 per eye. It used to be a 3-week recovery time, now it's a 48-hour recovery time. It's a vital organ, so there's the arguments that somehow this is not necessary, there's not a high level of precision, gets completely and totally dismissed. The market works no matter where it is, whether it be in healthcare, food, transportation, housing, technology, communication. So I want more market forces. I want healthcare to be bought across state lines in the States. I want a government that does not pick crony favors of hospitals that make big contributions, or drug companies that have the right lobbyists, or trial lawyers that have proximity to Capitol Hill. The market works no matter where it is tried in the States. It's a totally screwed up system because it's half cronyist, half government run, and there are some really good parts of the U.S. healthcare system if you can afford it. We have the best treatment if you can afford it. You roll your eyes. How do you get things for more people to afford things? Through competition. We do not have that in the U.S. healthcare. So we solve half the equation. Half the equation is quality. The rest of the world benefits from the U.S. medical advancements every single year, whether it be heart monitor machines, whether it be pharmaceutical breakthroughs. 90% of the most instrumental and important drugs that are used in this country around the world stem from billions of dollars of research and development incentives that are put in the United States of America. So the rest of the world benefits from the U.S. healthcare industry, whether you like it or not. Now the problem is, how do you get more people the access to higher quality of care? Well, the law of markets that we've learned over the last 200 years, and we've seen and we've all experienced, whether it be how airplanes and cars and technology and phones used to be tools of the rich, and now they're things that we all enjoy for a low price and a high level accessibility, is competition. Capitalism does 3 things really, really quickly. It lowers prices, raises the quality of good, and allows more people accessibility to those things. Healthcare should be no different, and that's what I like to see in the States.
We don't have it, so just so you know. I think at your core you're trying to say we have socialized medicine, it works, and what you guys have overseas doesn't work. We don't have free market healthcare system in America, so that's why it's an absolute disaster.
You want to follow up really quick? Or?
I just have one more thing. So first of all, that was interesting. I've learned something. But Just out of interest, so in your world of like small government, I think there's, off the top of my head, I can think of two socialized institutions in America. I've got the postal system and I've got libraries. Would you want to keep libraries in your...
So just, you know, the postal system
Yeah.
is the biggest
Disaster.
joke.
Yeah.
If you make
Yeah,
a joke
you
about
can say that.
inefficiency, late mail, things that are misplaced, it is the U.S. postal system. So I would love to privatize the United States postal system because, and we have other companies. We have 3 companies that actually compete for parcel delivery service: DHL, UPS, and FedEx. And FedEx is headquartered out of Memphis, Tennessee, and does more tons of air cargo freight in the world than any other company because it's privatized, and they do it less per parcel. So privatize the postal service. So libraries are local government, not federal government. The postal service is subsidized by the federal government ineffectively. Libraries, it's up to the local government. I think there's a role for libraries. I think they're becoming increasingly outdated.
Whoa. You're saying like books for everyone? Shouldn't you have personal responsibility to have your own books?
If it's a local tax,
That's a bit of a straw man.
and if you don't want to live in a town with a library, don't move to that town. That's what's amazing about local government is you have the ability and the mobility to move to a place that might represent your values, or your interests, your needs, or wants more than others. And so if you want a place that has a higher police force or better schools, you move there. And that's what the founders talked about as laboratories of democracy, as Louis Brandeis talked about, the U.S. Supreme Court justice from the 60s and 70s. So we have these competing different markets of democracy. The best ideas will win.
All right, cool, interesting, thanks.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, thank you for coming to the UK. There's been a lot of talk about victim mentality, and I just wanted to bring up, you know, a real victim group. And I know, Candace, I've heard you talk about it a lot in terms of the unborn children and the genocide that's happening through abortion. So my question actually is to Turning Point UK. Where do you stand on the issue of abortion? Is this something that you're going to be addressing?
I don't think it's something we're going to be addressing as a campaign group, but I think because it's kind of, like I said, a personal thing. In the UK, I feel we've come to a compromise in the sense that we have a system where, I mean, whether we like it or not, abortions do happen, unfortunately. If I could do something to go back to give people another option, so that abortions wouldn't happen in the first place, that would be the ideal. But we live in the real world. Abortions would happen, and they would happen back street if they weren't happening through the government. I think there's a debate to be had about the time limits and people to think about that, but it wouldn't be an issue that Turning Point UK is going to be, you know, campaigning or lobbying on.
And I think where abortion is concerned, although I'm not personally against abortion, I am against the late term limits, and also the fact that black women are actually most likely to have repeat abortions in the UK. That's not really a good thing for me. However, you know, abortion, like Joel said, is kind of a settled topic in the UK. So that's not really something we'll be focusing on as much.
But, you know, this is an issue where babies, human beings, are literally being killed, slaughtered, and shouldn't that be something that, if we talk about personal responsibility,
right.
We're talking about
I'll jump in
caring
on
for
this
our
a little
families.
bit. So here's what I'll say. So Turning Point is an organization, and we focus on these things: free markets, limited government, personal responsibility is a big one, obviously. I've grown as an individual, and the more that you get further into it, you develop as an individual outside of an organization, your viewpoints. Abortion is a huge thing. I think it's murder. And the problem with abortion isn't the fact, is beyond the fact that it's murder, is the fact that people are being miseducated about it. I think that people would make different decisions if they were being properly, if they were
Feminism.
if they were being properly taught about what abortion is. Like, I don't know if any of you guys watched footage from our CPAC, our big our CPAC conference that we just had in DC. Go watch Dr. Ben Carson describe to you as a doctor what happens during the process of abortion. That should not have happened on a CPAC stage. That should happen in every single health class that you are forced to take throughout the public school system. Okay? When I learned about abortion in school, I learned about it like it was like deciding whether or not you wanted to wear brown boots or black boots for the day. And that's what's wrong. Our education system is training women to disassociate it as thinking of it as a living human being, as if it's just an option. And I think it's disgusting and that we need to entirely revamp the education system. I'm fiercely passionate about it, and it does disproportionately affect black women, and there's a reason for that because it's targeted in our education systems, in black neighborhoods. The ads are all over the adverts. You see, there are these big, what are they called? The big billboards that literally will show black women smiling, saying like, I just made a choice, like as if it was whether or not they should go out on a Thursday night. That is a major problem that I have, and I think that the abortion rate would significantly decrease if people actually learned what abortion was, and abortion is in fact murder.
And it's an issue for men as well. This same thing has been framed as if it's an issue just for women, but I think we need to hear more men speaking about it as well.
That's correct.
And education.
I think in the UK we're all more for like honest debate and discussing and putting more the ideas of personal responsibility, but in specifically kind of campaigning against that's where we're saying if actually more people took on those values of personal responsibility and the education around it, then maybe we'd see abortions start to decrease in the country.
As a group, CBR UK, we're also showing the reality of abortion. So we actually go to universities, Oxford, Cambridge, and we've seen like Oxford and Cambridge students, we go with big banners, we show the reality of abortion, we show graphic images to show the truth and educate people. And we've seen, Oxford students, which are meant to be, the smartest in the world, literally come and cover up our images, and they have no arguments. They go crazy.
Right. Well, I would just encourage you to keep pushing, and it's like I said, it's not what we do per se at Turning Point USA, but as individuals and as women, we should always be speaking up about it and having an authentic conversation.
And super quick, I'm pro-life. Here are 2 thought exercises for anyone in this room that might be undecided or pro-choice. Really quick, if it's not a life, why do we call a celebration of a pregnancy a baby shower, not a fetus shower? The second thing, that in the States at least, when a pregnant woman is brutally murdered, that actually counts as a double homicide, not as a single homicide. I'm guessing it's the same here in the UK. But if that very same woman, instead of getting brutally murdered, decided to go to a family planning clinic or an abortion clinic and decided to have an abortion, that's perfectly fine. A life should not have a subjective value based simply on what another person wants to do with it. The rights do not go away just because a single individual wants to do something or terminate that fetus or baby or whatever it is. And so those are some things to think about.
If I could just say one final thing, sorry. I would encourage Turning Point UK. I think we can learn a lot from our US brothers and sisters in this, and the Americans speak about this issue a lot more than us. And I think as Brits, we shouldn't be, sometimes we can be more
Too reserved
to
have real conversations.
It's too controversial.
Yeah.
There's off-topic things, and abortion is one of them.
Right.
So I'd love to connect with you guys afterwards. I love what you're doing anyway. So
thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that. Hello.
Thank you for being here. Okay, let him ask.
Hello. Sorry if I'm not as articulate as I could be. It's weird to see you guys in person. I am kind of interested in the wordplay, specifically Charlie, because I've seen the most of you online, but also Candace. I'm afraid I have nothing to ask, but specifically Charlie. A lot of the wordplay you use, and a lot of the sources that you draw on, like the statistics, you're very good at just ramping off statistics and throwing them into the person that you're arguing. I was wondering, where do you collect your sources? And do you make them easily accessible?
Of course. Would you like to name an example that I can cite for you now?
I don't question that the things that you're saying are factual. It's more how they are phrased and how they are put to us. So, for example, the thing that you've just said now about abortion, could you quickly remind me so I don't trip over my own
Sure,
words?
I'll do the first one. I say, a celebration of a pregnancy, why do we call that event a baby shower, not a fetus shower?
Right, so that in itself sounds like, oh, right, well, that means there's a cultural acceptance of the idea that it's a baby pre-birth. But that's just a linguistic, cultural way. So I'm pro-choice, for example, but I would still call it a baby shower. That doesn't mean I culturally accept the idea that it's a baby pre-birth. I'm just using a linguistic standard.
There's deeper meaning. Now, let's play this out. It's fun. So if the individual that has the baby shower decides right after the baby shower to have an abortion, what is that inside of her called?
I don't want to do this, if that's all right. I don't want to do abortion.
I know, but you see all of a sudden your argument
can I use a different
up?
example if abortion is kicking up too much dust?
Say that again.
Can I use a different example
Sure,
of a fact?
that's fine.
Okay,
that's
so
fine. Perfectly fine.
The first thing I saw with you in was your political debate with Hassan.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I saw of you. And you said, you'll probably still remember it, but it was that the worst 10 cities in America were run by Democrats.
Yeah, the poorest, most murderous. Yeah.
Right. So I looked it up because I wanted to read up on it, and there wasn't a source in the video mirror I'd seen. And that was correct. But it was also correct that of the top 10 cities most of them were Democrat, and across the board, on average, most cities are Democrat. So the fact that you took it out of the entirety of the fact, which is that most cities are Democrat, the top best cities are Democrat, and the worst cities are Democrat, and you chose to only say that the worst cities are Democrat.
Top best cities are Democrat?
Well, so he means the most he means the wealthiest.
In the same way that, yeah. So the study that I found that mirrored your statistic said that.
So cities tend to be more, urban areas tend to be more to the left, just as they are. But when Republican mayors are actually allowed the chance to govern, the results are remarkable. And so let's juxtapose cities versus states, or even if you want to extrapolate what my argument was really talking about. In the laboratory of democracy theory, which we all believe in, which is when certain states are allowed to have juxtaposed policies and contrast against each other, you see huge differences. So the most prosperous, most job-creating, most entrepreneurial states are ones with Republican governors and low tax, low regulation type policies. And there is a correlation between the most murderous, the most dangerous, and the most honestly hopeless areas, and Candace grew up in one of them, are almost always dominated by Democrats. But when those Republican policies are actually allowed to be instituted, those communities turn around quite quickly. So.
And another one was that you said, I think it was the life expectancy in Cuba was 15 years lower than that in the United States.
Yeah, if the government doesn't kill you, right.
Right, democide. But I looked it up as well, and I found there was no information on that. And in fact, the Google definition, which draws on, it cites many different studies, and it fills it all in and it pulls it all together. And it chooses the most reasonable response that's backed up by facts and logic. It said that it was actually a year older than the US. So how do you, especially
point.
when you're, like, I think it's called galloping, when you're throwing so many points in a debate, do you not think it's unfair and unreasonable and maybe at points even manipulative to be phrasing things in a certain way that might be, when beyond scrutiny, it's like me who had to Google all of these statistics, which pan out to be not as obtrusive and anti-left as you say they are? Do you not think that's at the worst incompetent, and at the best incompetent, and at the worst malicious?
So you're entitled to your own opinion, not entitled to your own facts. Let's talk about the Cuban one. I reject the own Cuban government's health statistics completely and totally. I don't believe the socialist governments of Cuba's health statistics that they submit to the World Health Organization or the United Nations, because objective, independent analysis of their own health standards are nearly 20 to 30 years behind life expectancy that their own government produces. So what you're looking at is corroborated by people that want it to be true. And we can have a 30-minute discussion over whether you believe the Cuban health statistics, but the answer is, show me another statistic of anything I've talked about in the 300 hours that Candace and I have done, public speaking. Everything I talk about, everything I do is rooted in years of research and backing and data, and I'm happy to talk about each specific one. I don't want to monopolize the time here, but I reject the premise and the insinuation that somehow I'm being reckless, because facts are not reckless. In fact, it's the basis of why we're here and what we believe.
You successfully pivoted away from the intention of my question, which wasn't the factual nature of the statements you were saying. It's the way that you phrased them.
So I phrased them effectively, and that should be a problem?
No, it's not about effectively as defined by you, as in it promotes your agenda.
You pivoted quickly away from the abortion thing.
Can I please finish my...
Happy to, yeah.
I pivoted away from the abortion thing, not because I didn't want to talk about it, but because it made me uncomfortable to do so.
Do you think do you think it's effective the way I worded it, because maybe it made you think a way you never had to think before? The point is, like, I could do this for I could do that for every issue.
It's more that, so you say, like, oh, we shouldn't trust the Cuban health statistics because they've got an agenda to promote, and that probably makes a lot of sense. But similarly, there are people whose prime objective, as if they're still stuck in McCarthyism, is to obliterate any form of socialism and communism as an opposition to free market capitalism. And so, similarly, in the same way that we shouldn't trust the authorities in Cuba.
If the root of this is capitalism versus socialism, is there an example where socialism is really thriving and worked as a concept? Like, this is what I don't understand. It's weird to me when people come up to this discussion and it's like, at your core, you're just defending socialism, defending Cuba, defending, what are you defending?
That's not the root of my question.
I get what you're saying is phrasing things in a way that maybe aren't fair, because you could find something on the internet that maybe supports communism and socialism. That's essentially what you're saying, right?
No, you're mischaracterizing me, actually.
Okay, how am I mischaracterizing you?
You're mischaracterizing me because you've generalized what I'm saying, which is that I've looked into talking points that Charlie's raised. I've found the exact... Can you that I found the exact studies that he's referenced and know that they do because they actually mirror the things that he's said verbatim.
So they're cited.
And
So I do use studies, is what you're saying.
I never said you didn't, Charlie.
I'm not sure where you're coming from.
That's why I'm saying I'm not mischaracterizing you. I get what you're saying. You're saying, Charlie, he's saying that you say facts, but there are also alternative facts that would maybe present socialism and communism in a better way.
You're saying it's unfair because of the way he's saying them, not because of...
Because from what I'm getting is you're saying that
that's called a debate.
Yeah, essentially what you're saying is he's too good at presenting his argument. Because you're saying... No, let me finish. You've just said you went and looked at over the things that Charlie said. You found them to be backed by studies, which would mean they were factual. So he's not lying. He's not mischaracterizing or using wrong data. Let me finish. You've been allowed to talk for a while now. And then, but the way he presents them in an argument when you say he's galloping may maybe make his opponent afraid to talk, or I don't know what it does.
Basically,
to
wants
however,
to argue with himself.
The bottom line is you're saying Charlie's using facts. I don't get how that can be a disagreement. That Charlie uses facts in his arguments.
You're saying that he's not presenting other facts that would defeat his debate. Yeah. So you're basically saying he should do also the job of Charlie Kirk and whoever's debating him, which is just ludicrous. At the same time. That's essentially what you're saying, is that Charlie should say, okay, you should look at a socialist country and say Venezuelan people are killing their pets to eat food, etc. However, in this situation, they had really good weather and it was sunny, etc. I don't understand how you want him as one side of I'm going to finish. And by the way, another good use of this time would have been if you actually had the alternate facts and just debated Charlie.
Just said yes. Instead,
while you were here, as opposed to debating the concept.
Because there's no point having your own opposition without actually getting the facts yourself to come and debate, rather than saying he uses facts too well.
Yeah. Final point, and I'll let my attorneys answer the rest of the question.
Again, you've mischaracterized what I'm truly saying here, which is that you're not trying to genuinely convince people. You seem to be, from the presentation of the facts that I've given you as an example, phrasing truths in a very specific way and choosing to ignore things that present it in a more balanced way to basically trick people, right? That's no. Please let me finish. 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 Can I finish? Please let me finish.
They argue their opinion.
Look, fact. No, seriously. Hear me out, man.
Facts are unfair.
Facts, right? Facts don't care about your feelings, right? Facts are objective statehoods, right? But the way that you choose to present them, right? It's like saying if a statistic is 68%, you can't just rearrange the 68 to say 86, right? Hear me out, because that is just lying.
You could rearrange it to say 32, no? You could rearrange it to say 32, the other way around. Those are both factual statements. If you say 68%...
Do I need the mic? I can hear me. Oh, sure. The way that you're choosing to... the way that you're choosing to talk about statistics, the things that you're choosing to neglect that present things in a more balanced way, indicates that your objective here isn't to convince people based on the whole truth, but in fact to play off of people's inability to quickly respond by asking for sources. Like if you provided a source, I'm struggling to articulate this, but it's just, with the example I gave you about the Democrat cities, right? That's a pretty condemning statistic that the worst cities, to summarize, are mostly democratic.
Yeah,
but you didn't present the whole statistic, and that was a very purposeful choice. If you look up that study,
Charlie's not going to debate himself. This is very confusing to me.
Because it's not a game, Candace, is it?
But you just said when he goes on campuses and he debates with people that he's not presenting facts that would try to destroy the fact that he just gave. That's the concept
they're the same
of debate.
facts, Candace. I don't see what you're not understanding here.
That's what it's called, a debate.
Because it's not about, the point of a debate, if you care about humanity, if you care about improving people's welfare, should be to present objective facts based on independent studies and decide which is what Charlie does, but choosing to neglect the entirety of the factual statement.
Okay, I think this is now turning into like a Yelp review of Charlie Kirk, and I'm not really getting
because he's an influential man, and his practices and everyone's practices need to be scrutinized, and yours are semantically.
I wish you actually I wish you actually would just debate Charlie. That would, I think, would be more productive for everybody here.
I do appreciate you coming up and saying this. I will issue a challenge to the world. Anyone can come prepared with any hundreds of pages of documents to debate me, and I wish them well. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Sorry.
First, I just want to say thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Last year, I was president of the Politics Society, so I know firsthand what it's like to try and get speakers on campus that are not well favoured. We had a lot of issues. We had, you know, if it wasn't going to be a no platform, it was you need to have someone of the opposite opinion to debate you. You need to have a chair. Very hard to get a chair for some of these events who are deemed as, you know, appropriate by the student union. What steps do you think that we need to take to try and, you know, get over this problem? And how do those steps differ in the UK than the US, for example?
I take the UK. I think that, for instance, take the Students' Union. I think the turnout in the elections was 5. Was it the last?
I think it was 10%, but it was 20% down on last year.
20% down on last year. And so in general, across most student unions, the turnout is between 1, let's say, because this can't be 0, to 10%, right? So you have these people who are in positions of power running the Students' Union, that most students actually, throughout their day-to-day lives, aren't actually bothered by what they have to say. It's only around the election time they say, I'm doing this policy, or I'm running this platform, or I'm the activities officer, or I'm doing this thing or other. I think that one of the things we can do is actually to get students as a body, which is what we're going to try and do, to actually realise that their free speech, I mean, is under threat in the sense that the things that we're coming to here tonight, I don't think we've been too controversial. We've had debates, peaceful debates with everyone we try to go about, but that's somehow banned, that can't happen in other universities. If we get students who are the ones electing these people into positions of power in the university, the power does go to their head, to then say, actually, our freedom of speech is more valuable than you putting this policy into place, I think that will then have to motivate those people who we put into these positions that then act on our behalf, let's say in our interest, to protect us from the bad words of Charlie Kirk and others. It will actually motivate them and force them into having a kind of more balanced debate and where we can actually have these discussions. Because at the end of the day, if you didn't want to come here tonight, no one forced you to. If you didn't want to have to hear the things that Charlie and Candace had to say that were poisonous, quote unquote, then you didn't have to come to. No one's forcing you. Why do you need a chair? People who want to come hear what we have to say are more than welcome to, and those who don't, no one's forcing them to. So I think it's the kind of it has to be from the ground up. It can't be bottom down where we kind of fully regulate. The government has some role, but I think being limited government, it's not going to work if the government just keeps throwing laws at universities and saying you have to do this or we'll take money away, etc. It's going to have to be from the bottom up where students say, we demand to have a debate, essentially. We demand that if you disagree with me, we can have that disagreement, and then at the end of the day go back to the Falmouth Bar or something and carry on as normal without people protesting outside. I think it's going to have to be from the bottom up rather than just regulating.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad in the States as far as the free speech crisis. It's much worse here. And I will use the States as an example of how this works. There are horrific fringe voices in the States. Candace and I fight for their right to speak. And what happens when they come on a university is no one shows up. And they make fools of themselves, and less people believe in what they believe after they came than before they came. It actually unites the campus around unifying values of acceptance and tolerance and diversity. When you do stuff like this, it actually divides the campus. I could even say some of the most hateful voices in America, people that I denounce repeatedly and I think that are the scum of the earth, like, I don't want to say their names, okay, because I don't even want to give them that platform, but you could fill in the space. I want them to have the right to come to campus. I don't want them to come to campus. I don't like the idea that they even hold these ideas. They're hateful. But when you allow more speech to happen, when you allow 500 people to ask questions, well, there won't be 500 people to ask questions because no one shows up when they come on campus. And there's a peaceful protest outside, which of course should be allowed to happen. The UK seems to have a different philosophy, which is we're from the top down, from the ivory tower, going to authoritatively tell you who you should listen to and who you should not listen to. Well, it creates a lot of division, a lot of misrepresentation, and a lot of tension, and it's corrosive.
Because essentially it makes people feel as if whoever's regulating them thinks that they're too dumb to see what a hateful idea for what it is. And I think that's more offensive to people and will drive them further to the extreme right and extreme left than saying, you go there, we believe that everyone is in touch with their views. Most people are quite sane and generally kind of have a good balance of values in this society. I trust you, I trust everyone to have their own balance of values, whether they disagree with me or agree with me or not. But if you then say, actually, I think you're too stupid, that you would see someone like, I'm going to name him Tommy Robinson and say, that's fantastic, who I would disavow, and if you're in the audience and you don't agree with me, that's fine, we can debate that another time. But I would have the trust that you'd go to an event and say, you know what, I can take away different things from that, and if we don't agree as a society, we don't. But I think it's dangerous to then regulate from the top down and say, this is what the Students' Union and other bodies are saying, it essentially, is that we think people are too dumb to realise that something's hateful on the left or on the far left or on the far right.
Yeah, I think some of the issue with that is university kind of communities are inherently temporary. Like, you go through and then you leave, and to get that motivation from people, first year building up, especially, you know, I left the politics society because I'm now in third year and I don't have the time for that. So I think a lot of people, you know, it's kind of galvanizing them for a cause that will distract from other things, which I think we'll find quite hard to do.
I don't think it would distract them from the cause in terms of turning out to events, but more just getting them to realize, and we'll be working that through our chapters and things throughout as Turning Point UK grows, but it's not kind of getting them out to an event for free speech, but just so they have that as a core value that, you know what, I might dislike everything you have to say, however, I will defend to death your right to say it. That doesn't mean in practice they have to go and give that person a platform, but then when they see posters like that of Candace coming around, they don't say, this is something I'm going to sign up to and say, I'm going to block you speaking because I disagree with what you say. They say, no, actually, they are the ones who actively say, that's a wrong way of doing it. If you don't like what Candace has to say, go and debate her. I'm going to go back and study because I actually don't care, and I'm going to stay at home. But if you dislike what Candace has to say, go and debate her. Don't spread posters around that whitewash her and say she's a racist to try and fool me into thinking that she is a racist when she clearly isn't.
Yeah,
Do you see what I mean? It's
yeah.
more like that rather than active society kind of thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's get a disagreement, though. And you're going to disagree? All right, then the one after you out disagreement. So just reorganize yourselves. You can go.
Hold on to that. If that's right.
Yeah, my question is just, I looked at some data while you were speaking about the gender pay gap in the UK and the US. So apparently it's 17% in the UK and 19% in the US.
No, it's not.
And it's WEF data, so I
Yeah.
just looked
It
at that
doesn't
right now.
exist.
So
The myth of
maybe,
the gender
World
pay gap.
Economic from in 2015,
Right.
in
So,
percentage.
happy to talk
No,
about this at length.
yeah, this is
so
like,
my question is basically, what do you think are the causes of this?
It
yeah.
doesn't exist.
Well,
Do
no,
you-
there is a cause for it. I'll tell you what it is.
And do you think there should be public measures to tackle it? And yeah, the causes and the public
Fair
reaction.
question.
So
I
what do you
get it. I
think?
get it all the time because obviously I'm like the anti-feminist. So people are always like, "How can you deny the gender, the wage gap?" Okay. So when I went to university, all of the girls that I was friends with were majoring in fashion and textiles and merchandising, and they all went off to intern at Vogue. And pick out Prada bags that maybe Kate Moss would wear on the cover of something. The average pay for that, if you want to be in fashion when you get out of school, is $20,000. Men were majoring in business and engineering and things that when you get out of school, you get paid more. If our interests, if we're going to go in and we're not going to be taking serious majors, and we're shocked when we find out the world doesn't need more people to pick out Prada bags for Kate Moss's shoot. I mean, that's not a gender wage gap. That's an interest gap, right? And that's what's happening. Also, women, we have different interests. Women aspire to get married, aspire to have children. They leave the workforce earlier. Every single one of my girlfriends, what I'm saying is that a person that is a brain surgeon should not get paid the same amount as a person that wants to pick out Prada bags for the rest of her life. I mean, this is what's going on in America. When you look at the wage gap, they're not telling you what the jobs actually are and what women are going into in terms of their majors in university. When you're taking feminist dance class 101, you're not going to make 6 figures when you go out of university. That's just the truth. And women, if there was a real feminist movement, would talk about that, would say, hey, if you want to make as much as men, maybe we should be majoring in engineering and things like that, but we don't because we have different interests, which is fine. But you then can't complain and think that we should now have a society that forces, what are we going to do? Are we going to have like a government that says now we have to pay women that want to go into fashion 6 figures to make them feel good and like they're doing things that are productive in society? Like that's not a practical solution. If we want to get serious, if women want to make more than men, they do. It's actually been proven statistically in America that when they go into the same majors and take on the same jobs, women get paid more than men in those particular fields.
So for Google, for example, I'm going to comment on this in a variety of different ways. Google, for example, did a pay equity audit 2 weeks ago.
That was last week.
And Google said we must go after gender-based wage discrimination. Turns out that men were being significantly underpaid at Google, so they dished out $9 million in bonuses to men at Google because women are being overpaid. A couple things. First of all, if you just lazily, as some of the studies that you referenced, not you're being lazy, but the studies are lazy, extrapolate all the women and all the men at a certain age and don't take into account how long they've been in a job, what they studied, their experience prior, the gender wage gap in the States does exist. But if you take in women that study the same stuff as men and are in the workforce at the same time as men, they actually earn 106 cents of the dollar more, meaning 6 cents more than a man does in the States. Candace made a brilliant point. In the States, if you look at the 5 majors that are the highest performing majors and the 5 majors that are 5 lowest performing majors. So roughly the 5 highest performing majors in the United States of America, petroleum engineering, business, finance, things of that nature. They're 80 to 90% more or less dominated by men. There's only one major that are dominated by women, a single out of the 5. If you look at the 5 worst performing, pre-K education, things of that nature, elementary school education, almost 80 to 90% dominated by women, because they naturally will make different choices because they're biologically
We're
set
just
up
biologically different. Our interests are different.
Really quick, women are also...
Can I just go back on that? Because I find it's a very interesting point you're making, the interest and the biologically
Yeah, it's backed
making.
up by a
and,
Cambridge
and
study.
Can you just elaborate on this? Because I would tend to disagree about the biologically part of the.
There's a
For
Cambridge
instance,
study
woman,
that
you
says
say
that,
woman, you say the gender gap doesn't exist, and that woman would be more inclined to do a fashion degree
Well, no,
rather than a business degree.
Well,
And
women and men are different. Yes.
I'm going to say something that you probably hate, an expression you hate, but social construct.
Well,
And
no, we have evidence of this, though. Look at the Scandinavian countries. They tried to get rid of this. They actually allowed teenagers to choose which, do you want to get into STEM fields or not? And the data actually showed that women naturally wanted to go towards, when they tried to make the society totally equitable and they tried to get rid of these gender roles, women still, because of the biological predisposition towards nurturing, women...
We naturally want to nurture.
They go to nursing.
There are definitely studies against that nurturing part. Women are not more inclined to be nurturing.
110% we are. 110. I mean,
Sweden is the example of it. You're just wrong.
It's just true. It's just true.
But based on what? What studies? Is it true based on what?
There was a study done by Cambridge scientists that demonstrated that men naturally revert to environments that require more structure, such as politics and the professions that he mentioned.
Business and finance.
Women naturally revert to professions such as teaching, which require more empathy and emotion. This is just a natural thing. It's important not to. It's important not to say that women should be forced into those roles, but you do have to accept
that we naturally
that
do.
we naturally revert to them.
It's just true. I'm just telling you, like, even if you've said, I'm telling you, every single woman that I went to university with versus every single man, there's just a difference in terms of the majors that we're picking, and we're not forced to pick certain majors. We just aren't forced to. So what you're seeing is the result of people picking their different interests, right? And unfortunately, the other part of your question was, should we do something in society to even it out? We don't have to do anything in society to even it out.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Do you think there's a biological difference between a man and a woman?
I do believe, indeed, there's a biological difference between man and woman, but when it comes to interest, I do more believe that...
So let me ask you a follow-up. Don't mean to interrupt rudely, but if we have biological differences, do I have more testosterone than she does?
I think, yes, indeed.
Do you think that testosterone could drive you to do different interests and things?
Well, I could indeed do believe that. Yeah. The thing is...
So maybe a man might be more likely to be a weightlifter, serve in the army, be a police officer, a firefighter, and a woman who has more estrogen might want to be a nurturer, a preschool teacher. Do you see how biology...
I have another question. Do you think it's desirable for the society, this kind of...
Of course.
I love it, yeah.
Absolutely.
I love the yin and the yang. I think men and women are symbiotic. It's beautiful. It's biblical. And it's something that we should stop trying to actively work to force and destroy at a certain point. I love it. And I did a podcast. I was interviewing John Voight, who you guys might know. He's Angelina Jolie's father, and he was talking about this like biblical, beautiful thing that our society is currently trying to destroy. And he said the thing that I see over and over again in my life, and it's nice because he's 80 years old now, so they have that wisdom when they get old. And he said women just know what to do when they have children. He's like, they just know. It's so innate. When you see a woman with a child, it's just the most beautiful thing. He goes, you get men around there, they don't know what they're doing. And every single one of my girlfriends that now has children says the same thing. That it's easier when the man just leaves the house because it's like they have another child, right? And that's beautiful, right? And feminists make you think that there's something wrong with that. Like make him do this and do that. And it's like, yes, there are certain things that we innately know how to do. And when I see a child, I instantly know how to take care of them. That's just something that's innate and it's biological. And maybe I don't have the data and the facts to describe to you that I can prove that this is a thing, but it is. It just is a thing. And I don't know why society wants to destroy that or force it in a different way and make men the people that are innate and know what to do when they see children. There's something really beautiful and spiritual about that should never be disrupted.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's end with a disagreement.
Disagreement, please.
You got a disagreement?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So, can I just hold it? All right. So my disagreement is on limited government. What I see is that you guys, you've taken the sort of libertarian approach of the American Revolution, trying to put it here. I'd say that actually the government here is too, it's not emboldened enough. And in terms of, okay, so hate crimes and that sort of ridiculous law, yeah, that's done. But in terms of governments actually getting things done, so say you have the rape gangs, you have knife crime, we have all these problems, but lots of it is because the arms of the government, the police forces, etc., aren't able to actually go in and solve these problems, whether it's because of political correctness or any of this. So my stance is that actually government is good, and I'd like to hear what you guys...
So don't say government's all bad. I wouldn't say government's good, but government isn't all bad. And actually what we'd like to see, or me personally, is government spending less of its time doing the things like you say, focusing on, telling me what to eat, and focusing on the other things, and actually in the areas where it's supposed to be, like defense, police, actually giving those areas the teeth to do what it's supposed to do. But when we say limited government, for instance, this is what I'd say. If you believe in the free market, then you believe that actually when you take green energy, we believe that, we need to talk about climate change, etc. So we want to have green energies, but then the government says, okay, we'll do it, we'll run it. Instead of letting the market do it, we'll run it. So we'll appoint a government czar, they will find the companies that we're supposed to invest in, and they'll tell us where to invest. So the government spent something in the billions investing in green energy, about 1% extra has been brought on. I think it was a few months ago that they said that the government czar, this green guy that's supposed to be the all-knowing, all-powerful government civil servant, was taking £600,000 from these green energy companies, and they were delivering minimal efforts into the green market. If you went into a free market system, it would be the case that you as the consumer says, I want companies that deliver green energy. So companies that don't, I won't use their products, I won't buy from into them, I won't use the energy price cap that keeps those prices artificially high, which means that even if you think you're getting a saving, you're actually not, which the government has put into place. It means that then, when you say, actually, I want a company that's a green energy, green market company, if you don't use them, they go out of business, the fossil fuel polluting or whatever you want to call them, and the innovation, the money that you're going to spend has to go towards green market energies. I think that would be a more sustainable way in the long term than the government trying to get its nose into every single facet of people's lives. And I think in the areas like you mentioned, actually, the government should get out of loads of other areas. And in areas like defense, and you said, stopping rape gangs and having the teeth for the police to act, yes, but the government spends its time far too much responding to things on Twitter and what people are saying there than actually arming or giving the police the tools to do their job. And that's why we say limited government. Limited government doesn't mean no government, but it means the government doing the things that the people have priorities rather than what the government thinks is the priority and what should tell people what to do. Do you see that kind of...
This comes to part of my second point, which is the third point here of saying limited government and personal responsibility. You had the whole individual sort of individualism thing. Personally, I don't really go in for that. Even when we were talking about Brexit, that wasn't individualism. For me, I think it was.
I
think it was.
Individuals turned out.
Brussels out of your life. That's individualism.
But this comes to with the personal responsibility, limited government. Do you think people are actually capable of doing it by themselves?
Yes.
Do you truly?
Yes.
Yes.
100% over.
I do. Yes, we believe in the individual.
I
That's
believe in
an
the
easy
individual.
way.
Look at the government wasn't the one that invented the light bulb. The government wasn't the one that gave us many of the inventions that we take for granted today. That was done by private individuals and their innovation enterprise. I don't back the government to deliver the next phases, to deliver the challenges in life. I back people to do that and innovators, and I don't think the government has shown itself to be successful at doing that.
The question actually terrifies me because we're getting to a point in society where people are like, what would we do without the government?
And also, surely the government is made up of individuals. So if you don't trust the common man to do it, you trust bureaucrats or someone else who are also human beings to make the right decisions for millions of people. I don't think that logic works. Do you see what I mean? You don't trust the common person to do it, but you think that because another man who says, or another woman who's doing something, that they're going to be able to give the best ideas. I don't see how you said you don't trust the individual to make the right decision. How can a government made up of individuals do the same? I think
if individuals put as much faith in the family as I put in the government, society would change tomorrow. I really do.
Okay, that's a good answers for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That guy has a Barack Obama shirt. I want to talk to him. Is that Barack Obama or Che Guevara? I can't tell the difference.
Both.
Okay, we talk to one more. George, we got to talk to the Obama guy. Yeah, we got to talk to the Obama guy.
You got to talk to Obama.
I couldn't tell if it was Che or Obama.
Okay, so I got this in China, so it's like Obama. It's like a joke.
Oh, okay. Obama.
Yeah.
And it's almost like not a joke.
And it says in Chinese, obey your leader. So regarding the politics of the US, I'd like to hear what you guys, all of you guys, even the Home Point UK people, would like to think on, what you think on who will the Democratic nominee in 2020 be, and why do you think this is the case?
Well, they've already got a ton of nominees.
But who do you think will be the nominee?
This is a hard one. It's so fun. It's so fun. This is like the Super Bowl for conservatives. Like, we love this. Like, I am much more interested in watching the 2020 Democrat dominate. Like it's going to be amazing. Let's see. We've got a fake Native American.
Oh, God.
Yeah. We've got a fake. He hasn't announced yet. The fake Spanish guy, Beto. Is he announced yet?
Not yet. No.
Not yet.
Robert, isn't that? Or?
But we've got Crazy Bernie, the Nutty Professor.
The Nutty Professor.
Kamala Harris.
We've got Kamala Harris, the fake hip hop music listening superstar. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be hard. I think if Beto gets in it, it might be him, just because he appeals to the youth in a way. Bernie's done. He ruined it the first time when Hillary rigged the election from him, and he didn't have the courage to stand up for himself. He abandoned everybody. Actually, a lot of people that were going to be for Bernie ended up voting for Trump because they were so upset about it. Elizabeth Warren's already out. It's like she's not even in. Trump did away with her pretty quickly. Yeah,
It was the worst presidential announcement ever.
Right, yeah.
He thanks.
Hey,
Genuinely,
honey, thanks for being in the house.
Where else would he be?
There's
It's
no
his
one
house.
there's no one that can beat Trump. But if there's any person that I think that would go the furthest, and he hasn't even announced yet, it would be Beto. If Joe Biden got into it, maybe a second, but he'd be like a far second to Beto, just because he's got some weird stuff on the internet.
Keep your eye on Michelle Obama, too. She might run.
You think she'll run?
I think Kamala Harris might be, I think she probably will win just because she's like an establishment.
Dude, she's so forgettable. Every time she speaks, I fall asleep.
Yeah,
she's like the most forgettable person in the entire world.
She's like an establishment Democrat, the same
Interesting.
way Hillary Clinton was, and they pushed her onto the Democratic Party. I mean, if she did end up...
If they were smart, they wouldn't have her, but yeah.
Yeah,
they could rig it for
If she
her.
did end up winning the nomination, like, I think she'd lose, to be honest.
Really?
All right. Well,
Interesting.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not running against Trump. I love Trump.